Birds flying high.
What the?
You know how I feel.
Are you okay?
I'm doing great
You know how I feel.
because it's a new dawn. It's a new day.
Breeze drifting on by.
You know it. Go ahead.
You know how I feel.
It's going to be a good day.
I feel like I'm going to sleep. I feel like I'm in an elevator.
It's a new life.
I feel like I should be like swaying back and forth. Okay.
Well, the point is, it's a new dawn. It's a new day. I'm feeling good. We're not going to get into politics today. We're going to talk fantasy football. Boy, Kenneth is on.
Man, he is on it.
All right. We will talk to Kenneth real quick, and then we'll do our introduction. Kenneth, how are you?
Hey, pretty good. I'm in a PPR, and I have a little bit of a situation at my tight end spot. I have starting. Should I roll with him, or should I go with Jimmy Graham against Tennessee?
Who was the first one?
Gronk.
Oh, Gronk. Oh,
I just left.
Gronk today. Yes, go with Gronk. You'll hear me talk about him a little bit later as well.
Yeah, definitely go with Gronk. He's a top 5 tight end today.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
You got it. All right.
All right. Well, he didn't waste any time to give us a call.
Yeah,
but let's get right to it.
He's the number one fan.
Football Buzz podcast. Yes, he is our number one fan. You've got the Commish Cyclop 2020. It is Sunday, football day, week 9. Welcome to the podcast. How you guys doing today?
Doing great, feeling good. What a crazy week between the election, between just about half of the team shutting down the facility for at least a day, to whole linebacking crews being out. But yet, it seems everything seems to be okay now that it's Sunday and games are going on and the election is over and we're moving on.
I agree, man. I'll say it again. My gratitude is live, real, and kicking. Gotta love football. Gotta love having fantasy. And of course, obviously, a lot of excitement in the air that this election hopefully is finally at an end. We have a clear and present winner. But a lot of interesting stuff happening in football. Big name quarterback. I'm sure Commish is going to cover that in his updates, news, and notes. Coming down with COVID. Crazy stuff happening in the league.
It sounds like some crazy stuff happening.
You need to drink more coffee.
Let's talk about what we're going to do today. We are going to do our typical Sunday morning start 'em, sit 'em. We're going to give you some updates here and there. We're going to bring some things in, talk about what's going on both in the NFL and in the world. And before we jump in, I wanted to make sure, look at the screen. We've got our phone number there. Give us a call at 772-800-BUZZ. Or if you're on Facebook Live or YouTube Live, you can leave a comment. We will get to the comment. We want to know your start 'em, sit 'em questions, your trade questions, your waiver questions. We are here for you. Before we get started, guys, was Charles Darwin the happiest person last night after that Notre Dame game? I don't know if you guys saw what happened when Notre Dame knocked off Clemson in overtime. It was double overtime.
Double overtime, right? Yeah.
And it was one thing for the stands to be completely filled with no separation whatsoever. But then they hit the field after the win. Did you guys see that scene?
Yeah, it was insane. It was like Rudy.
It was Rudy.
I wanted to start with Rudy.
Jumping into a big bucket of COVID. And I'm telling you, and we already know that there's been issues on campus at Notre Dame with COVID. It's going to be another super spreader event. And it just pisses me off that we're just not going to get a grasp on this thing until people start wising up. And it was, there was a part of me that was like, oh my God. And I was kind of laughing, and then I realized, oh my, this is not funny. This is scary. This is going to go back to their homes. This is going to go back to the community. This is going to reach us.
Yeah.
And that's on the heels of 3 days where we've had north of 100,000 infections confirmed each of the last 3 days. So,
and now we've seen in the NFL that it's actually starting to really proliferate a little more than what we've seen in the past. You know, when the season started, things seemed to be like, wow, they did a really good job of keeping this bubble together.
Right.
But now all of a sudden, every day you've got somebody else on the COVID list. It's a scary thing.
And you know, it's funny. Before the season started, we were kind of talking about this. First of all, Commish, you were so pessimistic that this was even going to happen.
Right.
But then even if we thought it did, we were thinking this was right around that time that if it was going to come to fruition, it'd be about week 8 or week 9 where things would just get out of control and maybe we would make it this far. So we're teetering right there at kind of what we were expecting.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I agree. And we talked about it, and that's why fantasy wise, which is really what the NFL is about now, said, put these things into place. There's going to be weeks. There's going to be this situation, that situation, and we'll get into, Kenneth has put out a couple comments, but, we know what's going on today as far as some COVID players and players that are clear, players that aren't. We'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a second. And while we're doing this today, I never realized just how many players in the NFL actually have 2 first names. And I think that as we go through the day, and if people call in and they have, we'll start with Josh Jacobs, right?
This was my first thought.
And we're going to see it is crazy. But let's start with Josh Jacobs, right? Because during the week, we found out that not only was his knee an issue and he was trying to get better on that, but then he came down with a non-COVID illness. Regardless, he is expected to play today. Keenan Allen, questionable. He has a last name, first name thing going on. Tested negative for a second time this morning. So therefore, he is eligible to play. He had a sore throat, stuffy nose, so they thought maybe he had COVID. He's now tested twice negative. He's going to play today against the Raiders. Matthew Stafford, right? During the week, we found out he was on the COVID list. But his status for week 9 against the Vikings, it was contingent on getting a negative test this morning. He did have that test. That test was negative. He will start against Minnesota today. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport, he's reporting Chris Godwin with his finger issue. He is expected to play today. Ooh. Saints wide receiver Michael Thomas, 2 first names, guys. He should be good to go today, finally. Whether or not he's going to do well, ankle problem, hamstring problem, we don't know. He is Michael Thomas, but he should be good to go today. Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott. He's got a first name as a last name. He's got a hamstring issue, but he has a good chance of playing today. The question is whether or not what kind of carry load he's going to get. Will he be sharing with Tony Pollard? We don't know. When we get into running back stardom situm, maybe we'll talk a little more about that. Falcons wide receiver Calvin Ridley. A lot of you guys are very excited about having him on your roster. He is going to go through pre-game workout today, but the team just isn't optimistic about his availability. So keep an eye on that issue. If you have somebody to back up Ridley, be ready to put that in your roster. The Ravens, they're elevating Dez Bryant. This is to the active roster today. This is less of a fantasy football play and more of a football interest play. It should be interesting to see somebody who's 74 years old playing in the NFL today. But we'll see what kind of shares of the targets he gets.
He just seems 74. He's only 31.
I know.
It's unbelievable. And he's been out for 2 years.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Golden Tate, guys. This guy is a mystery. I think he's one of the most underrated wide receivers in the game, but he will not play today against the Washington football team due to what the team calls effort and performance issues. Yeah. So there's something going on. I think he was talking back to the coaches. He will be eligible to return on week 10. He was complaining about his lack of play time, and I guess they're just not happy with his attitude. It's too bad because he really is a great receiver. 2 more things. Ian Rappaport, he's also discussing the fact that today the Panthers have activated Christian McCaffrey from injured reserve. Brad, I know you're happy about that. The question will be whether or not McCaffrey and Davis are going to split carries. That has been one of the rumors that's been out there. So we don't know. However, in Stardom Situm, I hope we get into whether or not Christian McCaffrey owners will start him today. Finally, both Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde have been ruled out of Week 9, and as a result, they picked up Alex Collins. He was signed to the Seahawks practice squad earlier this week, and Pete Carroll said that he would be very comfortable playing him. I got burned by Alex Collins a few years ago. He had a really good year, I think 3 years ago. He was supposed to be a top fantasy player 2 years ago, and he burned anybody who picked him up. And that's all the updates we have right now. And what we're going to do is we've got some questions already, and I think we're going to start with one of the questions right away here from Mark. He's got Evans, Antonio Brown, DJ Chark, Corey Davis, and Gus Edwards. Needs 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. Do you guys have any thoughts on any of them?
Well, I mean, Evans, yes. Antonio Brown, maybe.
We don't know, right?
Not yet. We don't know yet.
What?
Okay. So we know that Mike Evans is going up against is going to be paired up against Marshawn Lattimore. But keep in mind, this is not your grandfather's Marshawn Lattimore. Lattimore right now has a 50.3 rating, which is not good for a cornerback. The advantage of wide receiver versus cornerback is 34%. Mike Evans is definitely a start today. So that's one of them for sure.
I say Corey Davis.
Definitely Corey Davis.
DJ Chark without Minshew there.
Jake Luton.
And Gus Edwards looked good last week. Who knows?
Yeah, the only thing I'm scared about
is Corey Davis is getting 10 targets a game consistently.
But the problem with Corey Davis, and if PFF is right, he's going to be facing Kyle Fuller today, one of the best cornerbacks in the league. There is not that advantage there. A.J. Brown, on the other hand, is going to have Jalen Johnson matched up against him. So unless things switched up, it could be more of an A.J. Brown.
You don't think they would move Fuller? You don't think they would move Fuller around to start covering A.J. Brown?
I don't know.
Corey Davis has been the hot receiver there, so that's usually
I get it, and I agree with you that number one, we don't know what Antonio Brown's going to do. Some people assume that he's going to do what he did against the Dolphins last year when he came in for the Patriots and just lit it up. We don't know if that's going to be the case today, so it's hard for me to say start Antonio Brown. We already talked about Chark, but I do agree. I would put Evans and Corey Davis and Gus Edwards as your flex today.
Exactly, because the Patriots last year didn't have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin.
Yeah, but we've seen this before, and it's like they'll come in, the first 6 passes are going to be to Antonio Brown.
And then they're going to fade it out.
Right.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Mark, thank you for the compliment on the Van Halen album. I appreciate that.
I want to say something interesting on some of the updates. You were talking about players with 2 first names. They weren't major updates to mention, but there are actually 2 players that have 2 last names that were kind of there. And one is Jamison Crowder, who actually is going to play. And the other is Baker Mayfield, who was just on the COVID list and is not going to play. I thought that was interesting.
Very interesting.
That changes. Who's his backup?
That's a really good question. I have no idea.
Mike Fitz?
Backup? Mike Fitz?
No, I have
no idea. We're going to have to look that up, right?
Yeah.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump right into our Stardom Situm. Again, if you have any questions about who you should start, who you should sit, go ahead and give us a call, comment. We will get right to it. We will break into it. We would prefer to answer your questions rather than have you there just listening to us talk about our Stardom Situm list. So if you have questions, hit us up. We will get right on it and let you know. We're going to start with quarterbacks. What quarterbacks are we starting today?
So there's a few out there. All right. So Josh Allen is a start for me today. This guy's had 2 separate seasons. His first 4 games were off the charts, 30-plus points a game, just running all over the place. And then his last 4 games have been closer to about 18 to 20 points a game. So it's been 2 seasons for him, right? Now, what happens? He gets Seattle. Seattle is 31st against QBs giving up points, okay? They also give up at least generally about 10 points a game on the ground to quarterbacks. That's a nice fit for Allen. So if there's any kind of a bounce back game and any kind of a, that he's going to have a push for the second half of the season, today is the day. I start him. They're going to have to keep up because of Seattle's offense, and I'm looking for him to have a good day. My second, that people are off and on about him this week, but it's Ben Roethlisberger. He's been solid all year. Now he's going against Dallas, right? So Dallas, people are worried about. They're going to score a bunch. They're going to just run the ball, control the game, because Dallas's defense is not very good. But, people thought that maybe with Rodgers the other night too. And what did he do, right? Because they were going against a very depleted offense with San Francisco. So I'm looking for Roethlisberger to kind of sling it around today. He's got his weapons. I mean, he really has 4 guys to throw to on that team. Going down with Deontay Johnson, Juju, Claypool, and Ebron. Now he's become more of a factor, and a pretty good running back. So yeah. I'm looking for him to have a good day with a start for me. The last one, he's really become a must start in almost every league. I know 2020 you made a big push for him and you got him this week. Is Justin Herbert. He plays Las Vegas this week. They're around middle of the pack against quarterbacks, giving up points. But now, especially with Keenan Allen playing, I thought he was going to be out, and then breaking news, he's going to play. I mean, Herbert's just become a must-start fantasy player. He looks great. I mean, this guy looks like almost like a seasoned veteran in there at this point.
Number 6 ranked quarterback.
Yeah, overall. So those are my 3 starts for quarterbacks. If anybody else has any, go ahead and throw them out there. I'll do a couple quick sits. I only have 2. Phillip Rivers going against Baltimore. Now, Rivers has had a couple really nice games, but look at the teams he's played against: Cincinnati and Detroit. Not very good defenses, and he's able to rack up those points. I'm not saying he's going to have a bad game. What I'm saying is, fantasy-wise, he may not put up the same numbers they're used to the past few weeks. So be very careful there. Baltimore's defense is very good, and they will get to him more than the last 2 defenses. So be careful there. My next sit, and this is not really a surprise, but unfortunately, it's Tua in Miami going against Arizona. They're flying across country. Arizona is in the top half of defenses. They may have a little bit more give than the Rams this week, but it's a second game. He's not coming off a great outing. I think they're going to be very conservative with him. So don't look for Tua. And again, probably if you have somebody else on your roster, you're not starting them this week. Obviously with Fitzpatrick, it was a different ball game there if you had Fitzpatrick on your roster. But if you were thinking about it, don't start Tua.
All right, sounds great. But we have some questions that I want to get to real quick. The first one is Jared Cook or Evan Ingram. It's unfortunate that those are your choices, because I don't think if I had to give a grade to both of them, I would say a C+. I don't see much of a difference in their point totals today. I think the experiment. Who knows? Evan Ingram is just week to week. You don't know what he's going to do. Jared Cook has a high ceiling because he is a touchdown guy. So I don't know how you guys feel, but to me, it's just
you know what? Honestly, Commish, it'd be a pick 'em. I don't like the matchup for Cook. He's going against, to me, what is the most elite defense in the league in Tampa. They're really good at covering the tight end, where Evan Ingram's got a tasty matchup against Washington. So if we're looking strictly at that, and Jones is starting to look for Ingram again, I think he's the most targeted tight end in football. So just on the basis of those 2 factors, stay away from Tampa defense. They shut down Aaron Rodgers. So need I say more? I would go with Ingram, just matchup alone for that reason.
If I remember correctly, last week Tampa didn't have such a great game. Whoever they played, it was last Sunday night. Was that right?
Yeah.
And they gave up 25 points to, was it the Giants?
Yeah.
Who came back right? Okay. So out of these 2, I'm going with Jared Cook. You're getting Michael Thomas back. You're getting some weapons back there, which opens up the field for Cook more. And Breeze has gotten very comfortable with Cook over the past few weeks. And so out of these 2, and both of these guys have been getting a lot more targets over the past few weeks. But I think
they've both been getting a lot of targets. But keep in mind, Jared Cook right now is number 7 in the league when it comes to fantasy points per touch. So when he does get the ball, it's either a long pass or a touchdown, where Evan Ingram is 112th in the league in fantasy points per touch. So, again, it depends on your scoring system. Keith, I have to disagree with you. The football team is one of the best passing defenses in the league. And I think they're actually going to shut Evan Ingram down. So if you're going to make me pick somebody, I'm picking Cook today. Okay.
Next question.
Another question from Alan. Morning, fellows. Pick one running back to start: Rojo, Gordon, or with Gaskins and Breda out, Jordan Howard. Stay away from the Dolphin running backs today. Yep. It's going to be a hodgepodge of the new running back that was picked up, Washington. I don't know who's going to be activated, if Ahmed's going to be activated. Laird. So it's going to be a mix. As far as
Washington,
Rojo and Gordon, what do you guys think on that front?
Gordon is starting to lose traction in that backfield. Yeah. Lindsey just looks like the better back. If that guy could just stay healthy, I mean, that's a top 15 running back, if you ask me. So in this, Fournette's coming up as well, but in this grouping of running backs, I'm going to go with Rojo. He's been looking really good. And
Fournette's been getting the ball more as well. So that's a little worrisome. I don't know. These aren't great options to have going into this week.
Well, that explains his record.
Well,
actually very well.
Actually, if you're gonna, I think I almost feel like this is the same thing with Cook and Ingram, where it's kind of a coin flip. I personally think Gordon is going to have the better day, but I don't think either one of them are going to do great today. They're going to be touchdown dependent, both of them. So, we don't know who's going to get the ball on the goal line or who's even going to come close enough to the goal line for them to do it. Tampa has too many targets. At this point, I would probably roll with Gordon.
Do you think they're not going to give Jordan Howard at least an opportunity there to get, 12 yards on 15 carries, maybe a touchdown?
12 yards. I was just going to say, though, listen, you got Breda out, you got Gaskin out. It's basically him, Laird, and I don't even know if
I know. That's why
you got Washington and Ahmed.
He may have an opportunity today. He may.
Something? When he came back, his first game back in Philly last year, he tore it up. He absolutely. This is a previous 1,000-yard rusher when he's getting the balls, when he's getting the carry. So, you got to think they got Tua there, right? He only threw for 100 yards last week. Game change it's gonna have to be a different narrative going against a really good Arizona offense. But this could be it's a toss-up, and that's why we're not going with Howard. It's just a really big unknown how he's going to do. But he's got an opportunity to get 15, 20 carries this game. Question is, what's he going to do with it?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do this. Let's jump into running backs. Keith, you've got which running backs are we starting today?
All right. Got some good stuff for you, fellas. Here we go.
We're waiting.
Yep. You done yet?
Yes. All right.
Did I put Michael Bublé back on?
There it is.
Could have gone at least with like Neil Diamond.
So my start of the week. So we're going to do start sits, but my start of the week this week is James Robinson versus Houston. First of all, the guy's been really, really quietly one of the better running backs in football. I don't know how quiet it is anymore. Number one, I love the matchup. I have him as my 5th ranked running back this week, which is higher than a lot of the other projections. Some of them have him there, but Houston's run D is one of the worst in the league. What I love about Robinson is, number one, they got a rookie quarterback starting in Jake Luton. And even before that, last week, he ran 22 times, got 109 yards and a touchdown. And he's even getting the checkdowns out of the backfield. Last week, he got another 4 grabs, only 18 yards, but a scoring reception as well. It hasn't been a ton of attempts so far, but he's coming on. They're realizing what they have there. And again, with a rookie quarterback, you think they're going to try to control this game script, give him the ball a lot, and do a lot of checkdowns. So be Be very confident in getting him on your opening roster. Next up is Chase Edmonds.
Wait, you're not worried about the lack of offensive production? You really think that it's going to be that Robinson's going to have a good day because he's going to be catching passes out of the backfield?
I absolutely do. I think Houston's defense, even if they try to game script against that, they have such a weak front seven that James Robinson is going to be able to roll to 100 yards this week.
I'm going with the under.
There's no doubt. I agree. There's no doubt that the Houston Texans are one of the worst teams in the league when it comes to run defense. But if you're looking strictly at an offensive line versus defensive line matchup today, unfortunately the offensive line is so bad for Jacksonville that it almost gives Houston an advantage.
It does, but here's what's interesting. Robinson has the elite advantage of not only being the 3-down bell cow back, but even when the entire script changes and Jacksonville is coming from behind, which is in most games, he's still the back that's in because there is no Chris Thompson. So you're talking about a guy that's getting all the carries, all the quarters, regardless of the game script. And with
go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. But okay.
No, that's okay. And actually,
what else do you have?
Yeah. But we'll watch that game. It'll be interesting. My next up is Chase Edmonds.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Granted, going against Miami, which is the number one scoring defense in the league, but they are two out of his last 3 games, by the way. Chase Edmonds has gone for over 20 points. And honestly, when they've both been out in the field, him and Kenyon Drake, he's looked like the better back. Last week, he had 5 carries for 58 yards. This is because Drake went down during the game. And then when he took over, he clearly looked like the better back. And he had 7 grabs for another 87 yards. The downside on Edmonds is that he's only had 2 touchdowns, but that's going to change this week. First of all, the Dolphin defense, which is the number one scoring defense in the league, has given up 876 yards on the ground, giving opposing running backs a 4.9 yards per against average, and they've allowed the 9 rushing touchdowns. Only 8 teams have given up more rushing touchdowns than Miami's D.
Bend don't break, baby. It's bend don't break.
It is bend. Listen, I love Miami D, but as far as Edmonds, running backs are doing well against them because they are bending. And in those bending, you're getting yards and you're getting scores. And the other thing is, as much as I'm excited about Tua and I'm excited about this game, this offense is going to struggle with the rookie quarterback in there. So you're going to see what I think a lot of ball control and a lot of clock management, or not clock management. They're going to have a heck of a lot of time of possession on their side as well with Arizona. So feel free to get Chase Edmonds going this week on your roster.
Okay, so before we continue, we do have a few questions I want to get to. Bobby wanted to know, are we starting Herbert or are we starting Brady today? It's really tough, right? Because I think they're probably going to both get a lot of points. They're probably both going to do well. They're probably both going to get probably 20 to 25 fantasy points, no matter which one of these guys you start.
Yeah. You can't go wrong with either. Herbert does have that tasty matchup, though, against the Raiders, where Brady's got a little harder D against New Orleans. So if you're in a pick'em situation, which I think this is here, you just might look at the opposing defenses, but you're not going to go wrong with either.
Yeah, and sometimes for me, out of these two, it's like sometimes you go with the guy, right? Brady is the guy. Herbert's the guy there. I understand that. Brady has the history. Brady's got what seems to be now all his receivers there. It'd be hard for me now to go with Brady there. Breeze is going to put up points. They're going to have to, this could be a 40 to 37 game by the end of the night kind of game is the feeling of it. So I'd probably go with Brady.
Mm-hmm. And then we have another question. We got Amari Cooper or Leonard Fournette. Man, that's tough because we do have Dalton starting again. It's not Vinny Bag of Donuts, right? DiNucci?
No, it's I thought it was Gilbert or
it is Gilbert. Yeah,
it's Gilbert. Excuse me. Yeah. So going with a rookie or a quarterback in his first
Pittsburgh,
start,
by the way,
and against Pittsburgh. So I think there's no question you got to go Fournette there, who's been making his way back into the good graces of that backfield.
Yeah, Pittsburgh is number 3 right now in the league of yards of passing yards. So against. So I would stay away from Pittsburgh. Definitely go with Fournette. you have that ceiling issue with Fournette, right? He's going to get the carries, but he's also probably going to get the goal line carries.
Exactly. Then we got Jefferson, AB, or Marvin Jones. Wow, Jefferson's a tough one. I mean, he is the total definition of boom or bust. He just lights it up or he completely disappears. So it's worrisome.
Let me address this one because I'm going to be doing the wide receiver start 'em, sit 'em, and I mean I'll get into that in a little bit. But Marvin Jones is definitely on my radar today. So if you're going to since if Stafford wasn't playing, I would say Justin Jefferson. Stafford will get the start today. I have to go with Marvin Jones with Kenny Golladay out.
I got to agree with that as well. Yeah, Marvin Jones is finally carrying his weight because in the beginning of the season, Golladay was out as well, and Amendola was out playing him. Quintez Cephas was out playing him, but Jones is finally back in the good graces of that offense.
This is interesting. I mean, that's a good problem to have, Darson.
Yeah,
those three to pick one.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Just with recent history, go with Jones. He should be just as good, if not better, than any of those two other guys this week.
All right, so Keith, back to you. So far, we were talking about starting running backs. You said Robinson. You said Chase Edmonds. Who else are you looking at?
I got Justin Jackson going against the Las Vegas Raiders. Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I've got Justin Jackson ranked as high as number 10 over guys like CEH, Antonio Gibson, and David Montgomery. So last week, Justin Jackson established himself as the guy on that team. Traymon Pope came in, started looking good. Josh Kelly is completely fading out of that offense. Last week, Justin Jackson, people don't realize he had 20 touches, 17 rushes for 89 yards, 3 grabs for another 53 yards against an above average Denver defense for a PPR league score of 17 points. This week, they get the Raiders, who, by the way, have given up the most rushing touchdowns in the NFL at 12 and are giving up 4 yards per carry to opposing running backs. So I like the matchup. He's in there for the grabs. He's not getting the goal line carries, but he's an explosive guy that with a PPR league, even a half-point PPR league, he's the featured guy in that backfield and he's getting grabs as well. So that rounds out my starts. Are we doing sits now or you want to do sits later?
Well, before we do that, and I'm sorry, I know, Brad, you wanted to run through this quickly today, but I just can't sit here and allow Keith to tell our listeners to start Justin Jackson today over a lot of these other running backs, including the ones that you named. I mean, the Raiders, I understand what you said about the Raiders, but they're actually ranked 11th in the league when it comes to yards, total yards against running backs. So as far as I'm concerned, until he can prove something more than just what he did last week, until he can show that that offense is going to be dependent on him, I actually have him 16th right now, below people like DeAndre Swift, Antonio Gibson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, David.
He's gonna smoke those guys.
All right, so here's what I'm proposing. We need some kind of bet between you two.
Absolutely.
For today and where this goes, and with some kind of, doesn't have to be a big consequence, just a small consequence. Maybe one of you has to wear a Trump hat for a day.
If I win, then he has to give me his cabin in North Carolina for that week, and he's got to go another time.
Yeah, that's not happening. Okay. So before you get to your sits, we do have another question from Darson. He wanted to know Hollywood, Slayton, Fournette, Mike Thomas. First of all, take Slayton out of the mix, and that leaves you with the 3 that you have. I'm not impressed with Hollywood. Nobody has. People are actually dropping him in a lot of leagues right now. But Slayton's matchup, and we'll get to that in wide receiver start him, sit him, is not good today. I do not like the idea of Slayton today, so I would go Hollywood, Fournette, and Thomas.
I agree. And if anything, Hollywood's a squeaky wheel right now. He's been complaining about the grabs. But
yes, he was mentioning about the grabs, but also Jackson came out and said, I need to get him the ball.
Right.
So we'll see how that plays out. Like, is he going to try to force it to him today or get, some long passes downfield? We'll see. Slayton, with Tate out, Slayton becomes a little better play. He's got a tough matchup, but, I would say Fournette and Thomas and kind of coin flip on the other two.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's do this. Why don't we jump to your sit 'em real quick, but let's just make it quick. Let's just run through, tell people who not to start.
Yeah, I only did one sit this week, and it's Jonathan Taylor. First of all, he's going up against Baltimore, which is one of the best defenses in the league. But not only that, he's been dealing with a minor knee sprain, and honestly, this backfield has been a guessing game. Last week against Detroit, he had 11 carries for 22 yards and 3 receptions for 9 yards. Where Jordan Wilkins, who everyone started last week, of course, had 20 carries for 89 yards and a touchdown, and he even had 1 grab for 23 yards. As a matter of fact, his 1 grab for 23 yards outpaced the 11 rushing attempts that Jonathan Taylor had last week. So he's going against the number 2 scoring defense in Baltimore. They've only given up the league best 5 rushing touchdowns all year. Teams don't move the ball well against them as well. They've only given up 31 first downs this year in Baltimore. So I was, really big on Jonathan Taylor, as was everybody when Marlon Mack went down. I think he's playing a little more injured than people are letting know. He's a rookie, and it's just a mess with Wilkins and Naheem Hines back there. And again, going against Baltimore, you got to sit Taylor if you have better options.
All right, so the news just came out. Calvin Ridley, it is official. He is inactive today. T.Y. Hilton is inactive today. Kenny Golladay, we already talked about, is inactive today. Just make sure that those guys are not in your lineups. As we get more of the information coming in over the wire with actives and inactives, we will let you guys know. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is jump really quick into our wide receivers, our start 'em, sit 'em for wide receivers. And, before we get to that, Keith, I have a question. Did you just look at your roster and say who you're starting and not starting? Because all right, well, we'll get to that later. Okay, let's jump into wide receiver, start 'em, sit 'em, Brad.
The answer is no,
but you know that every player he has is the best.
Yeah,
He knows his fantasy roster like nobody knows.
Wait a minute. I have John Taylor as a sit, thank you, and he is on my roster, who I'm trying to trade right now.
Exactly,
because I bashed him. That wouldn't behoove me. Hey, if I'm trying to move a player, I'm not going to say sit him. So let's just be fair, fellas.
So next week, just put your roster up on the screen, and it'll make things a lot quicker.
In a big font, thank you.
Brad, if you can pull up the start 'em, sit 'em for wide receiver.
I got you.
Okay. We're going to start with Stephon Diggs versus the Seahawks. And I know it seems like a trend, and it actually is. Let's start with our start, not our sit.
Wait, where is this? Right. Go ahead. You go ahead.
All right. So let's talk about the Seahawks. Okay. You always start players against, at least your wide receivers and quarterbacks, against the Seahawks, the Vikings, the Falcons, the Cowboys. And today, Diggs, who's been up and down, kind of like Josh Allen, rebounded from a season worst 10.8 points to last week, a respectable, 15 points against the Patriots. But guys, it's the Seahawks, right? They have allowed the most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. Look for 7 catches, 83 yards, and a touchdown for Stephon Diggs. Marvin Jones against the Vikings. That was one of the questions that we had earlier, whether or not someone should start Justin Jefferson or Marvin Jones. I don't think – he also said AB or Marvin Jones. But in this case, I still think Marvin Jones is the guy, and here's why. You start your players against the Vikings. I already went through this in the last one talking about how bad some of these defenses are, right? The Vikings have allowed 15 touchdowns to receivers this season. That's the highest total in the NFL. Do not look for him, though, to have that 4-touchdown day he had against the Vikings last year, but I would not be surprised if he has at least 2 of them. Keep in mind, Jones has actually scored at least 13 fantasy points in back-to-back games, and he had close to 20 fantasy points in what was a really tough matchup against the Colts last week. So with Golladay out, expect Jones to be the target leader for the Lions and expect him to have the most fantasy points on wide receivers for the Lions as well. Julio Jones, since returning from injury, and as a Julio Jones owner, I was very frustrated. But since he's been back, he's caught 23 of 29 targets for 371 yards and 2 touchdowns. And with Calvin Ridley now officially out, you're looking at more passes to Julio Jones, and even a good, at least good news, not for AJ Boye, but he is actually out dealing with a concussion today. He's the cornerback for Denver. He's the best cornerback in Denver who would have been linked up against Julio. He's not in. So if you have Julio Jones, fire him up, wide receiver number 1. Finally, Jerry Jeudy, 2 first names. They play against Atlanta. So you've got guys against the Seahawks, the Vikings, Atlanta. And Jerry Jeudy's coming off a game where he saw a career best 10 targets, 73 passing yards. Yes, only 73 passing yards. But the Falcons have allowed 15-plus fantasy points to opposing wide receivers in all but one game.
Did you just say Jerry Jeudy, 2 first names?
Yes, that's what I keep talking about today.
That's funny.
Okay, guys, I'm going to break in here. I'm going to break in here. We know what's been going on this week with the election. We have a very famous person asking a question. All right, we have our
Donald Trump,
our sitting president, who is on his way out, asking Fuller or Claypool this week. Now, we know he's not going to have much to do.
It doesn't matter because he's going to lose either way.
I was just saying, you know what? Tell him he should start Chad Johnson. That's who he should start.
He's listening. He just asked us. He's listening. So, Math Quest, we'll get to your question in a second, but we thought this one might be a little more important to get to. So, guys, Fuller or Claypool?
It depends.
And just so you know,
yeah,
he could not spell Claypool. It's Claypool.
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
That's
it really is Trump.
Claypool plays for Pittsburgh, which is in Pennsylvania. You might want to avoid that state. It hasn't been good for you.
Go with Fuller.
I'd go with Fuller out of Texas. Yeah, go with that one.
Yeah,
he's tremendous. The best ever. And nobody knows wide receivers like me. I know more about wide receivers probably than anybody else on the planet.
And so he's saying he's a big fan. All right, and then he respelled Claypool for us. Thank you, Donald. We appreciate that. You can listen anytime you want. We will give you as much fantasy advice as you would like because we know you're going to have more time on your hands now. So
let's start with this, right? So Claypool is up against Dallas, and we know how bad that Dallas defense is. But Will Fuller's up against Jacksonville's pass defense, which also is not good. I think they're both really good choices today. The only difference is, guys, Claypool is now at the point where he's sharing with Juju, who's been coming on, Deontay Johnson, who's been coming on, where Fuller, we know that Brandon Cooks has kind of been coming on. Kenny Stills is not getting anything. I think Fuller is going to get the target share today. So I think he's got a higher ceiling, where Claypool probably has a higher floor. But I like Fuller's ceiling today. And
I'm going to disagree with you. Actually, Cooks has been getting more targets over the last almost 3 weeks now. I mean, Fuller is a stud. He really is. And I think he's actually auditioning for another team right now. They keep talking about trading him. But I like Claypool. He's getting some running back yards as well. I think he's going to get the touchdowns this week. I agree with you. Smith-Schuster's coming back. He's starting to get more targets. And Deontay Johnson, I really think, is the 1A on that team. But those 3 options, I'm going to go with Claypool.
All right.
So we'll get to another question here. Sorry, we passed on Math Quest, a faithful listener, and lots of questions each week. We have as a flex position Hollywood Brown, Mike Williams, or Antonio Brown. I will take this one real quick, and you guys can jump in. I'm going to go with Mike Williams here.
Yep.
Justin Herbert. They're going against
Raiders.
The Las Vegas defense, which is middle of the road for defenses. Go with
Keenan Allen's not 100%.
He's not 100%, but they said he is going to play.
He's going to play.
But yeah, I mean, I'm looking for a nice week for Mike Williams, and those other 2 guys definitely are a bit on the back burner right now. Either one of them could have a big week, but I think Williams is your play. You guys go ahead.
No, I agree.
I just think that they're all going to be very close. I don't see much difference between Hollywood and Williams today. I think you when it comes to things like this, right, when you're trying to make these type of decisions, you have to determine your ceilings and your floors, right? Who has the potential, given that these aren't guys that are going to get, 10 targets today. You've got to figure out which of them are going to make the best of their targets, right? We talked about Antonio Brown already. It's a mystery. Nobody knows, but he will be the guy that'll probably end up getting a lot of passes or a lot of targets today just to prove that he can do it. And we already know that he has a relationship with Brady, so it's very possible. So I think the ceiling on Brown, even though the floor is very low on Brown, I think the ceiling is pretty high. Mike Williams is a throw and catch guy where when Herbert throws the ball up, he's just going to hope that Mike Williams can outcatch his defender. And Hollywood Brown, we already talked about, has made some noise. Lamar Jackson has come out and said, yeah, maybe we need to get the ball more to Brown. As far as I'm concerned, if you're going to look for people with a high ceiling today, I'm going with Mike Williams.
I've got another question here with Christian Kirk, and I'm sure this was just his iPhone acting up, but it's pretty funny. Mecole Hardman. So with Christian Kirk or Hardman, that's a tough one because you got Sammy Watkins is not playing. Hardman has been coming on, but Christian Kirk has been an incredible deep threat for Kyle Murray. To me, I'm just going to look at the matchup here at Miami.
It's not close, guys, and I'll tell you why, okay? If you're looking at wide receiver cornerback matchups, Christian Kirk is going to be shadowed today by Xavier Howard, one of the best cornerbacks in the league. He's got a 78.4 rating with PFF. So if you're looking at the difference between the rating of Christian Kirk versus the rating of Xavier Howard, it is an 18-point disadvantage for Christian Kirk today. Hopkins is the one who's going to be getting those catches. I would stay away from Christian Kirk.
I will say this, and you're right, Xavier Howard is a beast, but where he is susceptible and he has been beaten this year has been by those speedy receivers down the sidelines on the deep ball. And that's where Christian Kirk's specialty is.
No, Xavier Howard has not been beat by that. He's been beat when they've shifted. The problem is with Miami is that it's not a man-to-man defense. They play a lot of zones. So what's happening is Xavier Howard, if they're like it happened with Robert Woods last week, if he goes into motion, he's hoping that either the safety or another cornerback will pick up the wide receiver that was matched up with Xavier Howard, and therefore it looks like it was supposed to be Xavier Howard. But as far as one-on-one down the field, he actually has one of the highest ratings in Pro Football Focus as far as passes against.
Let's hope that's right this week.
And keep this in mind, okay? The Dolphins, and I think I mentioned this to you, Commish, during the week, have given up the least points in the NFL.
Yeah, we're going to talk
so
about
far
that
this
defense.
season.
Yep.
Right, and Mecole Hardman is actually going up against Rasul Douglas, who's actually not that great.
My other point was you have this guy, he's pretty good at quarterback for KC that's throwing the Hardman. So anyway.
Murray's no slouch either, though. We'll see. It should be interesting. Another question, we're looking at Damian Harris or Devin Singletary. I'm not crazy about either of these. Harris is getting the ball, and Zach Moss is really becoming seems to be the favorite running back there. Who's the Patriots are playing?
Damian Harris is actually injured. Damian Harris will be playing. The question is how much. The news came out this morning that he does have an injury problem, so I would definitely stay away from Damian Harris today.
You don't want to trust him before the injury, let alone if he's injured.
Exactly. So we have Jerry Judith or Emmanuel Sanders. I love that you gave him two first names. But
I didn't give it to him, but
no, but I mean I love it. So Jerry Jeudy or Emmanuel Sanders. That's a tough one. You got Michael Thomas back again. Tampa's defense, I don't care what happened last week. That was an exceptional defense.
You've already heard what I said on the stardom with Jerry Jeudy. You got to go with Jerry Jeudy. I don't think there's a question here.
Yep. Tim Patrick is playing, but I do love Jerry Jeudy. Drew Lock is the real deal. He's a good quarterback and should get the ball downfield. So that goes with all
what I was saying about Jerry Jeudy, by the way, is he's going up against Atlanta, and 6 out of the 8 number 1 wide receivers that have played against Atlanta have surpassed 100 passing yards and or scored a touchdown. So today, this is a prime spot for Jerry Jeudy to get double targets. He's definitely a solid wide receiver 2 today with tons of upside. Go with Jerry Jeudy.
Actually, quick question for you. Who do you like better, Patrick or Jeudy this week? Because Patrick
is going to be playing. He's coming off of the injury. I still like Jerry Jeudy
today. You like Jeudy over Patrick? Interesting.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Hey guys, I've got to bow out. I apologize.
No problem
for the rest of the show. I have a couple sit tight ends, but you know what? They're tight ends. There's 10 good tight ends, and I'll give them to you real quick. Who we talked about earlier.
Before you go, we got to give you. We haven't mentioned this. I don't know. I was a minute late on the call. That we got to give a shout out here because Cyclops had a milestone birthday just a couple days ago. The man turned 50. He can officially get discounted insurance with his ARP card. Good for you. But the boy turned 50. A lot of us didn't think he'd get there, so congratulations on that. And
you're not the only one. I don't know how I got here, but I'm here, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Happy birthday! Don't worry about the tight ends. We'll
figure that out. Don't worry.
We'll figure that out.
Hopefully, once COVID's over, we can all celebrate together. Everybody, thank you for the questions. Donald Trump, thank you for your question. I mean, it's fantasy football. It's certainly not politics. So we'll happy to have you on.
I got to tell you something. He knows more about fantasy football than politics, from what I've seen from his questions.
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna continue for about 5 more minutes.
Thanks,
we'll say goodbye to Cyclop right now, and
all right,
then
guys.
we'll
see you Tuesday.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So we do have another question
from Alan.
From Alan wants to know what our thoughts are on Dez Bryant being activated. Like I said, I don't think it's going to have a lot of fantasy impact. It just has football interest impact. I want to watch this game to see what's going to happen. But look, if I had Dez Bryant, I don't know if I necessarily would start him today unless I was really desperate in that case. So
yeah, absolutely. Agreed.
So just to quickly summarize, when I was talking about start 'em, sit 'em for wide receivers, start Diggs, start Marvin Jones, start Julio Jones, and Jerry Jeudy. And my sits guys, I hate to do this because he's my boy, but Devontae Parker, will Tua be allowed to throw it today? Probably. Will he be able to? We don't know. But we know that last week Parker had a season low 2 targets, although his 1 catch for 3 yards was a touchdown. But right now, the fact that he's either going to be covered by Patrick Peterson or Budda Baker, it's hard for me to have any confidence in Parker today. So sorry, if you have Parker, I would sit him.
Mm-hmm.
And real quick, he talked about Darius Slayton. Someone had asked about it. He's been a kind of a nice surprise. But like I said, the Washington football team, they've been incredible in limiting receivers. And here's an interesting stat, Keith. No team has allowed fewer fantasy points to wideouts than Washington. They've surrendered a league low 929 yards and 3 touchdowns to wide receivers. And no wide receiver has topped 86 yards against this secondary. So it's hard for me to envision Slayton or Sterling Shepard having more success with Daniel Jones. So that's why I think you should sit Slayton today if you have some better options. All right. So did you want to talk about defenses? Did you have any?
Yeah, I do. And I just have, I think I have 1 start and 1 sit on defense. So my start here, we've been talking about them a lot this week. Believe it or not, even going up against that high-powered Arizona Cardinals offense is Miami. And by the way, they are not on my fantasy roster, but they are, in fact, the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL.
Fair enough.
You said it perfectly. They are bend, not break. They're giving up yards, but they are not allowing teams to score. And it starts with their passing defense. They've given up the fewest passing touchdowns in the league at 8, combined with the fact that they've grabbed 7 interceptions. They have the 3rd highest turnover percentage in the league at 16%. And what I love about them, this is all because Brian Flores has been doing a fantastic job blitzing the quarterback. They have the 3rd highest blitz rate, having blitzed 119 times so far in just 7 games. That's 40.3% of the time. What that's resulted in is 64 pressures, 19 quarterback sacks, and that's what's led to those 9 interceptions. So that's my start of the week. People are shying away from it. They've looked good, but now they're going against Arizona. I haven't said it once. I'm going to say it now. Fire them up. I like it. My next start this week is the Patriots defense versus the Jets. Why? Because it's versus the Jets. I don't even have to say anything else after that.
No, you don't.
They have Flacco going.
Playing, you start the defense.
Yes, and the Patriots have not been quite what we accepted this year or expected this year. I think they're starting to feel the hangover of not having Brian Flores at the helm now after 2 years. But I would feel free to get them rolling.
The only team in the NFL that you would not start against the Jets would be the Jets.
Right.
So
But they would love to play themselves if they could.
They would,
Is that like
because
a masturbating football team if they play against them? Like they bust out a fleshlight? Sorry, I regress. Okay. My sit this week is a team that people have been streaming high expectations on this defense coming into the year, and that's the Los Angeles Chargers. They're going against the Raiders, who are doing a pretty good job on offense, actually. On the year, they're the 14th ranked scoring defense. They're middle of the pack on passing yards, giving up the 17th most, and 13th in touchdowns, allowing 14 so far to opposing quarterbacks. And they only have 4 interceptions on the year. They've got a good rush defense, giving up 4.7 yards per average, while yielding only 5 touchdowns on the ground, which leads the league. But Derek Carr should be really able to exploit that Chargers secondary. So if you have a better option and you're streaming, I would stay away from the Chargers this week. Josh Jacobs should have a fine week, and I'm really glad I just traded him. So anyway,
it's been a disappointing defense this year, the Chargers.
It has.
And really. I know that they've had the injuries, which has brought them down. But there were a lot of high hopes for that Chargers defense this year, but things have not been working out for them. I want to talk about tight ends real quick. Obviously, you want to start your typical, top 5 tight ends. We don't need to go through that list. But in just looking at matchups, some of the ones that come out that you would never think about starting, that might be someone you might want to stream if you're in that position where you're not sure what to do with tight end. You're streaming them week to week. A guy I haven't mentioned since 2016, which is Kyle Rudolph. He actually has Jaron Kearse as the safety who's going to be covering him today. That's a really, really good matchup for Kyle Rudolph. So if you're questioning Kyle Rudolph, I mean, obviously if you have Mark Andrews or Waller or these guys, Kelsey, you're not going to start Rudolph. But if you have no choice. Also, today, this is going to be a rebound game for Jonnu Smith. So I know he's had a terrible few games. And so Jonnu Smith owners have been very disappointed. I think today is Jonnu Smith's rebound day. He's got a 24% advantage over Roquan Smith, who, Roquan Smith is no lightweight. He's a great player, especially against the run. But in covering tight ends, he has not been that great with only a 59% rating or a 59-point rating. And then finally, Mike Gesicki, another guy who has disappeared that a lot of their owners are upset about. He's going to be covered by Deontay Thompson today, who is not a great tight end defender. So I'm looking for Jonnu Smith and Gesicki, both of them, to have good rebound weeks today.
And I'll throw a little cherry on top of the rebound. I'm looking for Noah Fant. Drew Lock is back. Noah Fant has been one of his favorite targets. I know we got Judith back. Love that now. Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick. But even with them both healthy, Noah Fant was one of Drew Lock's favorite targets. So I really like him this year over guys like Jonnu Smith. Noah
Fant's going to get his targets. The only reason I brought up the others is because of the matchups. Noah Fant's going to be covered by Deion Jones, who is actually a really good tight end defender. I know that Atlanta defense as a whole is not great. I don't think you can go wrong by starting Fant, so I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see what Austin Hooper does with a rookie quarterback making his first start. Generally, that's their safety net, their outlet. It's going to be a nice heavy dose of Kareem Hunt, but I think Austin Hooper being back and healthy should also have a pretty good game. Should be targeted heavily.
No, I doubt it.
You don't think so?
No, I don't. I think Hooper's not going to have a good game, but that's okay.
I think he's going to get the targets. I think he's going to get. If you have better options, obviously go for it. But we're talking about guys out there, that you're unsure of.
All right, so it is almost noon. There have been no additional inactives that have been listed for today that are of major interest. Obviously, we talked about Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde already, both of them already being declared as inactive. We talked about T.Y. Hilton. There's really we know Gardner Minshew. I know we didn't talk about that earlier. It was brought out during the week that he would be inactive. So we know that in Baltimore, Mark Ingram, we talked about that. He was inactive last week. He's going to be inactive again this week. Look for them to share the ball between Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins on that front. Is there anything else you wanted to say today before we sign off the air?
Yeah, I'm just kind of bummed that Trump called in and Biden didn't. I mean, I know he's busy. He's got a lot
I think he's a little busy now. Probably going to have somebody else put his lineup in today, but as long as it's not an illegal lineup.
Just bummed. I would have much rather Biden called in, but it's fine. But yeah, no, another exciting week of football ahead. I hope everyone does well. I certainly hope you enjoyed the show. Commish, great job as always on the updates, news, and notes. And hey, it's Sunday. What else?
It's a new day. It's a new dawn, and I'm feeling good. Take care, everybody.